Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you do not have a cup of coffee or your favorite
this one's
tea,
really good, like extra good coffee this morning.
Mine's pretty good. I have not been drinking as much coffee lately. And so I've been savoring when I do, but
sometimes just hits.
Yeah. We did not come on today to talk to you about coffee. We came on to talk to you about resistance and caterpillars. Yeah.
So I heard this story recently, like about the caterpillar. Okay. We all love the caterpillar, you know, the very hungry caterpillar, especially. We read that story a lot with our boys. But caterpillar's a pretty crazy animal. I mean, it goes in this cocoon. It literally pretty much dies. Okay. Like you open up that cocoon, there's just like goop in there and scientists don't really even know what's happening. And then it comes out this amazing butterfly. I think there's so many metaphors, and I think like there's so much powerful like metaphorical analogies you can grab from the caterpillar to butterfly transformation.
Yeah.
But I think one that I want to focus on today is that the cocoon, right? The cocoon. And if you actually like, you know, you watch a caterpillar in the cocoon, you know, I remember doing this like in third grade or something, right? They had like, you know, a little fish tank in the room and we got the caterpillars and you would watch these caterpillars come out and it's like, oh, can't we let them out? Like, just like, let's help them out. They're just barely trying to get out. But what we learned is if you actually help a caterpillar get out of the cocoon, it won't survive because the resistance creates the strength that it needs for when it's outside of that cocoon, when it actually has that transformational breakthrough. And I wrote something down on Sunday. I wrote, you know, we were at church and they're talking about persistence. And this line kind of just came to me because I really feel like we're in this persistent season and maybe you are too. And this line says, it's the persistence in the resistance that builds the strength to go the distance.
That's good.
Ooh, that's good. I was like, wow, that's a writer downer. It's the persistence in the resistance that builds the strength to go the distance. If I was on Twitter, I'd tweet that. I guess I am on Twitter. Someone told me the other day.
Oh, cool.
I'm posting.
Better start tweeting.
I guess someone on our team is posting my stuff on Twitter.
Perfect.
So that's awesome. Post that, team. Post that one. Tweet it.
Okay.
Is that a bad word? Did I just say a bad word?
I don't think so. You're seeing another side
of it.
Feels
like.
But no, I feel like there is this resistance that so many people have shared an experience. And not only that, but we are in Q4. If you go off of quarters, which we have for a really long time, I think the first time we started going off of quarters was paying taxes because it was just easier than
what's
to do.
Q1?
Yeah. What's Q1? What's Q2? Q3?
And e-commerce. I feel like we learned about Q4 and e-commerce is like, oh, wow, Q4, like sales were way different.
But you hear this a lot in business, Q4. We're heading into Q4, which is for many businesses, a lot of e-commerce businesses, it's like this push until the end and I feel like there's a lot, maybe you have like really great momentum and you're just like, let's keep it going. And that's awesome. Or maybe you're like, oh man, I'm looking at my goals and my hopes for the year and maybe I overshot a little bit, or maybe you're really close, or maybe you're just like believing for something big between now and then, especially as we head into the holiday season. And I think there's something that almost shifts in the atmosphere too when we head into October, November, December. Like I feel like every year, at least I'm always going like inward. I think just like the holidays bring up, you know, some of like my desires or dreams for the next season. And so anyway, all of that to say, I think there's many people who are, you know, you're coming up on Q4 and maybe there's been some resistance of your goals. And we want to talk about that today and tell some stories about the importance of going the distance and who it builds in you in the process that you wouldn't have been able to build or receive unless you had gone that distance and that persistence. And I just think that with no resistance, the breakthrough that you've been fighting for will break you. And with resistance, you'll get the strength to sustain, to keep going. So this is really important.
I know. I think like we live in this culture. It's like, I want the breakthrough right now. But I think I look back on when our business had like its first major financial breakthrough. I was so glad that didn't happen in a season prior because it would have really broken us. Like, and sometimes the breakthrough could break you. So the persistence in the resistance really does build that strength to sustain breakthroughs, right? Taking territory, it's like, breakthrough is like taking territory. And we always say like, it can take you up or it can take you out. And what you do in the process of persistence of fighting for that breakthrough is really important, right? So we shared the butterfly story, but I don't know. I think of a lot of stories. I think of like even in our kids, we see this a lot. I think the first person we heard this from was
David Green.
They talked about like, leaving wealth for your kids, right? He was like, well, that's a really big give to your kids, but it also takes something from them. And he had this really great argument of like, every give you have sometimes has a take attached to it. And you might think it's the most positive thing to just give your kids all the money in the world. But of course that can take something from them as well. And so we're kind of in this balance of like, yeah, we want to like love on our kids. We want to help them out. We want them to feel supported, but also like we don't want to take from them the experience of actually learning something, right? Actually
working through
having the persistence, the resistance, and building the strength. And I mean, we have a 4-year-old, so like it's early days of parenthood. And he, for sometimes when he goes into new things, there's resistance, right? I remember, probably the most powerful story is like the snowboarding story. He had that was like the most resistance I've ever seen him have. We booked this like private snowboarding lesson. Epic. Oh my gosh, I would have loved to do this as a kid.
So excited.
I was so excited. I was probably more excited than he was. So I'm talking about this for weeks and weeks. Oh, get excited, guys. It's going to be awesome. And he just started to like get something in his head about it that he was just like, nah, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And so we get there and I'm like, it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. We got the snow pants, all the things. And man, like when it came to the morning of him doing the snowboarding, like there was so much resistance. He was just like, no, just like,
we were the family with the screaming toddler that everyone was just like, oh my gosh. Like,
and we were trying to persist in the resistance, right? And of course we don't want to like force our kids to do stuff they don't want, but we know that like he might like this thing. We know him. He likes to skateboard. He likes to thing. And we're a big believer in like, you got to try something at least like 2 or 3 times before you really make a decision about it. Right. And so like we pushed through the resistance. It was intense, screaming and fighting and getting on the boots. And then like when he got the boots on, we went outside and I was like, okay, like he didn't want to snowboard, but we're like, hey, why don't we go like throw some snow around? And like, why don't we go just watch the little snow cat machine thing, and like, but anytime we try to get near the snowboard, it's like, no, like back to that mode. And it was just so resistant. But what it did was in him, we just looked for like the baby steps. Like, what was a baby step? Okay, snowboarding was too scary. But what's the baby step? And the trainer actually really helped with this because he was there. We booked his time. So he's just like, well, like we got to, let's figure this out. I'll just hang out with you guys. And, like their goal is to make it amazing, right? They don't like some kid to hate the mountain. That's like, imagine the lifetime value of that customer. If that kid doesn't love the mountain, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime that they're missing out on. So he was like, hey, you want to like ride in the car? Like the snow cat, this little like snow machine cat. What do they call it? Snowmobile?
Yeah. Something like that.
Golf cart. It was like a golf cart for snow.
Golf cart, yeah.
And he's like, you want to ride in that? And guy's like, no. But then the driver came up and the driver had candy. Okay. This was the key, right? So, hey, you want to come ride in this thing? I'll give you candy, right? Like, I know you shouldn't tell your kids, like, jump in someone's car if they give you candy. But we were with him. And so we're like, okay, you can have a candy. Choose your candy. Okay, so he gets in. He's choosing his candy. He's actually enjoying the little ride down the mountain in this little snow thing. And then they had this little, like, kids kind of like, little park. And it had, like, kind of like, it almost looked like a playground, little slides and things like that. And they had this snowboard with, like, a bar on it they could hold. Again, that was too much for him. But when we got down there, we basically convinced him to like sit on it, like sit on the snowboard, without strapping in. And we'll just like push you down these little slides, like a sled. And that was like the first yes, right? And did that for a little bit. And then I was like, okay, let's go inside and get some hot chocolate. And we went back out. And like, you guys, it's like 2 hours of just like little yeses, right? Or it's just like, hey, you're building the strength. You're building the strength. You're persisting. Right? It wasn't the big scary thing, but it was like go on your butt. Now, okay, hold on to this one with the bar and we'll drag you around. And he just worked his way up to the point where, by the end of the day, he was strapping into the snowboard, riding down the hill on his own with the biggest smile on his face, And like, I got emotional because it was like such resistance, usually just a little bit and then he's in. Like, you take him to a new class or something like that. 5 minutes of resistance, then he's fine. Right. But this was like days and weeks leading up to this thing and like hours and hours working through this. But I mean, just to see the smile on his face, it was like he broke through, you know? And now we talk about snowboarding. It's not a scary thing. It's like, yeah, that would be fun, right? He built the strength to get there. And so again, that's one story. We see this. I'm sure you've seen this in your kids a ton. Yeah. It could have been so easy for us to go, oh, there's too much resistance here. Don't make a scene. Let's go back to the room. Right. And that would take more from him, even though it would be easier route for us. It'd be less, of a scene. However, it was like that pushing through. We thought we were almost like we were this close to giving up, at moments. It was just like, okay, this isn't going to work out. That moment, like, it was powerful seeing him overcome that.
I remember when I was a kid, I had struggled with a learning disability. And so looking up words, scanning the pages, reading out loud, like that was all very uncomfortable to me, like on another level. And I remember I was in study hall in like 4th grade, and one of our assignments was to look up words in the dictionary. And who knows if that's even like a thing nowadays, but back then you would
digital dictionary? No, they probably have real books.
Maybe they do. I mean, I know they have real books, but
books still exist, yes, I think. Someone confirm. Do books still exist?
They do. Anyway, but that was part of the assignment, was like learning how to use your dictionary and look up words that you didn't know.
I remember that. I used to do that. I love the dictionary.
Oh man, it was such a struggle for me. So I just remember I would honestly, as a kid, I didn't really want to do the work because it was it was so hard for me and it was so frustrating. But I remember the study hall teacher coming over and I was asking her different questions, trying to be sneaky to get her to do the work for me essentially. But I'm so glad that she didn't do the work for me. And obviously as a kid, and she's an adult, she knew what I was trying to do. I think of now as adults too, that we want to skip over the hard part just to get the result, but you can't do that. And even right now, I've been going to counseling and doing some additional therapy, in this last season of transition, and it's really revealing my heart and areas in my life that I don't trust God. I don't, having never really dealt with a ton of anxiety. And I've had a lot of different anxiety in the last couple of months of just being in a new place and change and so many things that are sometimes in my control, but then very much outside of my control. And my counselor said to me the other day, we're talking about the fruits of the Spirit, which if you don't know, there's this beautiful verse in the Bible talking about the fruits of the Spirit, which is all things that we want. And it's oftentimes a verse that you hear at weddings, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and self-control. And she was asking me what do you think God is trying to teach you in this season? And I was like, well, these things. And then she stopped and she said, I think God's trying to teach you patience. I think he's trying to teach you patience because you're doing really good, but also it takes time. Sometimes healing takes time. Sometimes getting in tune with how you actually feel and healing some of the childhood wounds and making you think differently takes time. And she's right. I want to know what is the ABC thing that I need to do when I feel more anxious on other mornings, and I want to accelerate the breakthrough that I know that I'm having. Of course I do, but I just need to be okay with this is the process and I will be stronger because of it. And so my counselor was right. I am working on some patience there, but that was just a real life example more recently. And then one I'm thinking of as a kid, now that in hindsight, I can look back and say, wow, I'm really grateful that teacher didn't do the work for me, because if it came time for a test or anything like that, which I'm sure I had tests on that, I would have probably failed because somebody else had done the work for me. Yeah, there's just valuable things that happens even in this is uncomfortable, this is new, I don't want to do this almost.
I've almost had to reframe resistance in this season because I feel we used to, I don't know, I feel in our earlier entrepreneurial journey, we would kind of make it the enemy. It was there's this resistance, this pushback on this breakthrough, get out of my way. And you kind of have this attitude towards it. But right now I've really almost shifted to a gratitude of I'm really thankful for resistance because I know it's building the strength. I know it's making me it's helping me transform. It's helping me build more resilience. It's helping me be stronger in certain areas where I was weaker. And I know that's preparing a foundation for where we're going, right? Like if I don't do that work here, then it's like going in the gym and someone loading up the bar with 500 pounds. Like I haven't done any training and any hitting fatigue or any like building the muscles by tearing those things down and hitting resistance for a long time. I would just get smashed, right? And so I really have shifted to kind of a gratefulness for it when there is things that feel like, I don't know, would have kind of thrown us off in past seasons. I'm honestly just, I see him and I'm just like, wow, I'm so grateful. This is going to be awesome. Like who I'm going to become, what I'm going to learn through this. I want to get all the juice out of any squeeze and make some lemonade, you know?
Change, what is it? Growth will have change. When you grow, things will change. And sometimes that change is easy and exciting. And sometimes that change is hard, like changing the systems in your life that no longer serve you. If you're on a health journey, you're going to be changing some of your lifestyle habits that you are just second nature to you, like not eating certain types of food in the middle of the night, like I'm just giving an example, but there will things that you'll have to change. And because you've done something for so long a certain way, there's often like resistance met with, or you have to remind yourself more often, like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to do this. Like I even think of my own like health journey. And one of the biggest things that I worked really hard on was my cortisol levels. Like that was probably one of the biggest out of whack things when I looked at all my panels after I had Ollie. Was my cortisol levels were so high. They were high at night. Yeah, they were high at night and low in the morning, which they're supposed to be opposite. Yeah. And I had to work like so hard to like, I used to snack like late at night sometimes, and I had to remember to not do that. And even like blue light glasses or not getting my mind like wound up on work. I think that was the biggest thing for me, is like those habits that had just become habits, like reshaping them. And now I'm so grateful that I've learned to like sleep and like value that and see how that's so important.
And so I guess just encouraging word, if you're feeling resistance in the season, it's the persistence in the resistance that'll build the strength to go the distance. So I see that over you. You're going the distance. You're going to be all right. And I see a shift for you in this resistance, that it turns to gratitude. You're like, wow, I'm thankful for this. This will not be forever, but I am thankful for this because who I'm becoming and what it's building in me, because what's building me is a breakthrough that doesn't break me, but it breaks through and it sustains, right? It takes me up. It doesn't take me out. Yeah. And so I see that in a lot of listeners, a lot of our community, even us right now in this season, that we're right there with you. And, the only way you can change the reality is change your expectations, right? And change your attitude about the reality. Like, I think one thing that Dr. Shannon Irvine, we had her on our podcast. She's a, neuropsychologist, scientist. I always don't know. There's all these like psi words, psychologist, right? Yeah. So Dr. Shannon Irvine, she's a neuropsychologist. She talks about how every situation is neutral, actually. And this is like a really powerful coaching framework, is that like everything is neutral, right? It's how you define it that kind of determines if it's positive or negative. And so resistance is neutral. Something happens that feels like a wall. It's actually a neutral event. Like it's just like, this is neutral. And your mindset determines if it's for you or against you, right? If it's going to take you up or going to take you out. If it's positive or negative, if it's like something that's going to help you or something that's going to hurt you. And so mindset, when it comes down to mindset, is so important. And this is really the key to building these neural pathways in your brain that are going to serve you for years to come, right? And I think that's also part of the resistance, is renewing of mind, right? Like creating new neural pathways, like especially if you're, doing something that's completely uncomfortable, like starting a business, doing something brand new, like it takes resistance and choosing that mindset of positivity, or that mindset of overcoming, or that mindset of how can I instead of I can't, right? It takes choosing that over and over and over again. This is proven by science. I think it's like, 60 something times, right? You got to do this thing over and over and over again till it creates a neural pathway, right? So If you only done it 20, 25 times, you're in the in-between, right? Whereas like half times your brain is going to default to where it was and go down that pathway. And half the time it's going to want to go to the new pathway. You start getting in those high 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s on repetition of choosing a mindset, and it starts to become your default. And I've actually seen this recently in our business, in the finances. You know, like we have a big payroll, we got a big team, money's just like up and down like this, you know. And I used to freak out when it was down and just like, oh my gosh, like payroll's coming up in 2 weeks. We got all these families we're supporting. Like, how are we gonna do this thing? And I used to just freak out. And I just have found just having that happen so much and seeing it always work out, I'm just like, wow, okay. Like I've built peace through resistance, right? And I logged in the bank account the other day. It was one of those days I was like this. And I was just like, I'm at peace. Like I did not freak out at all. And then 2 days later, it was back up. You know, I was just like, it's just the journey. Like you get used to that. And maybe like, you know, we're doing this at a high level because we've been doing this a while and we get a high payroll. But it could be just the beginning of your business, like just making sales. You make 3 sales every day, and then one day you have a day with no sales, and you go into freak out mode, right?
What am I doing wrong?
Oh my gosh, because it's just new. You've just never been there, right? And so you just kind of like, once you get used to that resistance.
Yeah. Training your mindset. That would happen a lot, even in our wedding business. There'd be like months I remember being like, oh my gosh, we don't have any inquiries coming in, or we haven't booked a wedding. And I think if we would have done a better job every year,
we would freak out for like the first handful of years.
Yeah. I think if we would have done a better job tracking things to see, it would have been like, okay, this is actually like normal. You know? So that's up and down a business. But whether you are listening to this episode during Q4 right now or another quarter, like later in the year, just know that, that resistance and those building those muscles when things are really great or when things are like you're learning how to power through, you're learning how to be an amazing business owner, amazing mom, an amazing friend, like in those places where maybe you don't know the answer to everything right now in your business and it feels like there's walls coming up, or maybe there's a hard relationship that you're trying to figure out, like, how do I crack through? How do I like have deeper connection with them? Or maybe you're struggling with something in your family with your kids and you're just like, oh, man, doing all this research, trying to figure out the answer. I feel like it's in those moments of you keep pressing in that you learn those powerful skills. And not only that, but then when you are on the other side, you get to be a powerful voice for somebody who's behind you or somebody who's going through it when you're not. I know I've had that in my life with friends who have been through all different kinds of stuff. I mean, I think of that with parenting, especially. Like, I'm always like with older parents, I'm like, tell me, how did you do it? Like, what was it like then? And I just want to listen and lean in because they've walked it and they have the wisdom. And like, you get to be that with friends and we get to be that with friends, like on the other side, or even in certain areas right now, we get to be that with other people. So we just hope that this encourages you.
All right, that's it, you guys. Another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Cheers.
Cheers.
We'll see you on the next episode. Every week we come out with one. Make sure you share this with someone who it's going to encourage. Share this with your spouse. Share this with a family member. Share this with a friend. All right. We'll see you on the next one. Connect with us on social media at the Rainmaker Family. Also, I got a personal brand, Steez Diaz, on Instagram. Chelsey is Chels_Diaz. All the good names we're taking on Instagram for both of us. So you can figure that out. Just search it. You'll find it.
Yes.
And we do personally answer DMs and stuff there. So shoot us a message. We'd love to connect with you. Or follow the Rainmaker Family, the brand. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmakers is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.